sort of concept is lofts. Our lofts are at 7 feet above the doorway so that you can have a room that is a full-size room. You could certainly move that loft down to 5 feet and create what is in effect a 3-bedroom tiny house. That's a customization that's an option. It's not something we do normally, but it is something that certainly can be done. So we'll talk about the concepts of mixing and matching modules to give the buyers ultimately the tiny house, the house that they want. So that's what we're going to talk about. We will start up in another minute or so, and we'll go for an hour. We will introduce some of these concepts, and then we will have a short video. Ari Leopold, my son who's in the business with me, produced a wonderful video, which is sort of a video tour of our flagship model, the original ThinHaus. So we'll show that sometime around 10:05, roughly. And then we'll do some more concepts. And then towards the end of the hour, the last 10 or 15 minutes, we'll open it up to questions and answers. And we will then wrap it up at 10:30 so that you all can move on to other interesting folks doing other interesting things. So it is now 9:30. And let me all welcome anybody who is here to the ThinHaus presentation on customization. Basically, I want to define some terms. Customization is not re-engineering. It's an important point because re-engineering is a big deal. Customization is not a big deal, but re-engineering is a big, big deal. Let me give you an example. Our original ThinHaus is 24 feet long by 10 feet wide. If you wanted it to, and it's got wheels, and the wheels are in a very specific place. The wheels are in where they are because that's where the balance point is on the trailer, and that's so that you can take it down the road and the thing doesn't flip over on you, and that's why it is. If you want to customize the interior of the ThinHaus, that's certainly easy enough to do. Although you certainly can't add a rifle safe that weighs 4,000 pounds into the thing, because if you do, you'll blow the weight. But you can certainly do many things. You can change cabinetry. You can change kitchen appliances. There are things you can certainly change the shower into a stand-up tub. You can certainly change things into ADA accessible situations. These things you can do. What you cannot do easily is make it 26 feet. You can't just add 2 feet of steel onto the back of a trailer and figure, oh, well, it's just a little longer, it'll be no problem. That changes the engineering, and now you have a big, big change. You can't go to 14 feet easily. That changes the axles. You can go to 8.5 feet. That can be done because that's a pretty standard axle. But customizing and re-engineering are they're not even two sides of the same coin. They are two very different things. Think of it this way. Customization doesn't cost a lot. Re-engineering costs a lot. So if you are into the re-engineering of a product, then you are going to probably pay quite a bit because in effect what you're creating is a brand new product. When you start out as a DIY and you say to yourself, all right, I'm going to design this thing from scratch. Let's assume when you say that you are an engineer, that you are an architect, that you have built something before, that you know plumbing, that you know electrical, that you know HVAC, that you know roofs, you know all this stuff. And you then take a piece of paper that's blank and you say, I'm going to build this product, this tiny house. That's fine. You can do all those things. But that's not an easy process. It's not a simple process. It's not a quick process. And it is not a cheap process. So if you are attempting to do all these to make a house, make a home for yourself and your family for reasonable money, then what you do is you take a product like ours and you customize it. This is, by the way, we didn't invent this. This is not something that we came up with on our own. I mean, if you go to Fulton Homes or Meritage Homes or any of the home builders around the valley or any place else, and you look, they'll say, okay, here's the model, and here are the things you can do to it. Same thing for us, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So you have to decide what you want. And at some point, by the way, and you're not going to like to hear this, you're going to have to decide what you want and then live with it. Once you lock it down, changing even a customization gets to be a bit of a trick. And by bit of a trick, I am talking about money. Nothing, absolutely nothing is forbidden. You can do it. If you have the money, we can take a thin house and make it 75 feet tall. If you have money and you want a thin house to be 65 feet, if you want a thin house the size of a mansion in Beverly Hills, we can do it. But now you're not talking about regular money. You're talking about big money. And if you want to put big money into your house, that's a whole different thing. The other thing is that we should talk about is that once you start customizing to some massive degree, you then are probably have to ask yourself a question. And we ask this question of almost everybody who comes our way and asks for a change to our thin house. And the question is, what do you really want? For example, do you want a 14-foot wide by 60-foot long tiny house on wheels? Well, think about that a second. And then what you want to do is you want to have it somehow brought to the site and put on a foundation. What you've just described is a house. Why don't you simply build a house in whatever place you want to build a house? Because 14 by 60 is an 800 square foot house, which in Phoenix actually is a pretty classic small house. It's been here for 100 years. So you have to, once you start customizing and then leaning into the re-engineering phase, you then really have to ask yourself, what do I want? Am I really talking about a tiny house on wheels? By definition, as we all know, tiny house on wheels is what it is because of the International Residential Code, the IRC, that says that anything under 400 feet has certain advantages that we want to protect. If you go to 450 feet, now you have a small house that is permitted and inspected and all those things that we're trying to avoid. So by its very nature, a tiny house on wheels is small. And that's why you'll see wonderful, wonderful sessions by people who are talking about how to use the volume to its best ability. And again, when I talk about space, we at ThinHaus understand that space is a volume thing. It is not a square footage thing, although that certainly is a component, but it is a volume thing. You have in a thin house about 3,000 cubic feet, and we want you to be able to use them all if you want to. Although, if you want to use them all, then effectively what you've got is a storage container, but that's a different problem. But if you remove volume, if you use slanted roofs, if you have giant cabinetry, if you have kitchens that encroach on in space, you'll see when you see our video, you'll see our take on the thing is that volume is precious. It's not up to us as the builders to decide how you want to use your volume. It is yours. So we will give you everything you need, and then off you go to decide how you want to use your volume. If you want to have things hanging from the ceilings, in our case, it's not a problem because our ceiling is all steel. I mean, hanging from the ceiling, you could certainly hang. We've done it. We have built swing sets from the ceiling of our thin house, and had 365-pound workers swinging on it. And it's just fine, no deflection, because it's all 16-gauge steel. But our feeling is you can do these things, but we're not going to do them for you. Once you start getting into the customization, then what you're beginning to get into is, will we do a thing for you? And we will. We'll be happy to do that. Will we, for example, put in a soaking tub instead of a stand-up shower? We absolutely will. It is probably in this case better that we do that, because for you to take out the shower and put in a soaking tub, well, it certainly is a possibility, just like remodeling a house. It's better if we do it up front. So that's what we're talking about. And that's where this definition, what is engineering, re-engineering, and what is customization? Also, we talk about this concept of, so there's a question here. Anyone here just to do a tiny house, no wheels? I appreciate that. A tiny house with no wheels is just a small house. And that's fine. You can build this. I mean, I have books back here. I mean, back here, there are tons and tons and tons of books, including one that I found. The city of Phoenix was using it for their historical houses, because houses back in the 1800s and early 1900s were all small houses. But a small house without wheels is just, a tiny house without wheels is just a small house. And while that's a great thing, it's not what we do. And there's a reason why we don't. And that's, I'm going to turn this back down just a little bit. There we go. So that's what's going on here, is people come to the festival and they are confused about what is a tiny house on wheels. What is a tiny house? What is a park model? What is an RV? RV. Oh, my goodness, get me started on RVs. RV is a wonderful thing. In fact, I always think of RVs as the grandfather product to our tiny house on wheels, the ThinHaus. But an RV is not a machine, a device, a living arrangement that's made for 24/7, 365. It's just not made that way. It is made to go down the highway, and that's pretty nice. But it is not made to live in all year round, especially, oh my goodness, if you happen to live in my neck of the woods, which is 115 degrees for 3.5 months of the year. An RV will blow up if you do that. You need a major league insulated envelope and a major heat pump situation to handle that load for months and months on end. I mean, in Scottsdale, as you may not know, but if you don't, you should, that the evenings in the summer are over 100 degrees. So your air conditioner my air conditioner turns on in late February and goes off about a week ago. And that's just the way it is. And if you choose to live here, you're going to, now with global warming. I mean, this summer we've had more days in Scottsdale so far this year, over 100 than under 100. We've had 150 days over 100. And I don't suspect that's going to get any less. So living in an RV out here is a problem. Living in a tiny house, by the way, is not a problem. In fact, it works very well. We do it all the time. So the concept of the differentiation, understanding what you're talking about, what you want. If you want a house without wheels, that's great. Now, by the way, let's take it one step further. And I'll venture into the concept of the tiny house without wheels. When I go to the Scottsdale building department and I say I would like to buy 5 acres up in North Scottsdale, out in the desert, no one will know I'm there. And they go, you bet no one will know you're there. And I'd like to put this tiny house. Will you let me do it? They say, no. I say, what would it take to let me do it? And they said, well, put the thing out there, put cement blocks on the 4 corners, and take the wheels off. You do that, we'll give you a green tag. I watched one of the sessions yesterday, and they were talking about this. That sometimes it's as simple as that. Just ask them what they want. They'll tell you what they want. For the most part, you can give it to them. Now, in our case, one of the design parts of our ThinHaus is 4 jacks on the corners so that you can set the thing out on your pad or however you're doing. Side note, jacks. We used to buy jacks that were rated for 5,000 pounds. We found out that a 5,000 pound rated jack is not really a 5,000 pound rated jack. A 5,000 pound rated jack is 5,000 pounds static, 3,000 pounds of lift. Well, turns out, of course, our ThinHauses are on 7,000 pound axles. 2 of them is 14,000 pounds divided by 4, and now you have 3,500 pounds, and you can't lift it, in theory, with the jacks that are 5,000 pound rated. So, if you're putting jacks on, great idea. The difference between a 5,000 pound jack and an 8,000 pound jack is about $4 a jack. So buy 8,000 pound jacks for tiny houses, not the 5,000 pounds. Separate note, little pro tip, buy the ones with the crank on the side, not the one on the top. The one on the top is sort of a pain because it hits your house in every turn. On the side, you're better. Just a little pro tip. Okay, let's talk about the evolution of a customized tiny house. Just like the old days, where people came to America, out west for sure, and they wanted a house, but there was no house builder, so they had to build it themselves. And they did. Classic DIY. Go out and cut down some trees and logs and do whatever, and you build yourself a house, and off you go. That's fine. That's what people are doing with tiny houses now. You see it all the time. In fact, this festival is probably 35-40% oriented towards people who are building up. Oh, I want to build my own house. I'm in the middle of building my own house. I want to do this. Where do I buy this? How do I do this? What do I do? Which is fine. By the way, feel free, anybody, to ask ThinHaus anything. We are what we call an open source company. We have no secrets. We think it is best for everybody if we share what we know. Our plans are available and they're free. If you want to take our plans and attempt to build a ThinHaus on your own, we certainly will help you as best we can. You aren't going to be able to do it because there are some very special tools that it takes to do it, but you're more than welcome to give it a try. If you want to know how we do insulation, our insulation, which we call the poplar sandwich, it's available. There's no secret there. We'll tell you exactly how we do it. If you want to know how we do our trailers, that's fun. You may find that you want to take one of our trailers and let us frame it out with steel and then take it from there. Or take our trailer, framed in steel, let us put the electrical and the plumbing and the HVAC, and then off you go. Those things are perfectly fine. You can do that too. But the concept of secrets, we don't believe in industrial secrets. Everything we have is open to the world, and we're happy to talk about it. Okay, let's talk about DIY. So you go from DIY, so you go from DIY to factory built. That's us. We build these things. You can go to our website, thinhaus.com. Happy to have you come and take a look carefully at what we're up to, and we have attempted to demonstrate clearly. The videos are very fun, and you can see where we're going. So that's what we build. What we build before, let me tell you how we got there. Basically, what we did was we went to everybody we could find in the tiny house world, and we said, what are you doing? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? We took all that stuff, we stuck it in the blender, and out came the ThinHaus. That's why it's 10 feet wide. That allows us to put the stairs next to the bathroom, not inside the main salon living area. Gives you a little extra space. 10 feet is a pain to move. I'm not disagreeing with anybody who says so. You need permits, and we have moved them, and it's not the simplest thing in the world. However, you don't move a tiny house very often. So for us to add 2 feet onto the side gives you a bit of a hassle 3 or 4 times in the life of the home, when living in it day to day is so much nicer. So that's why we've chosen 10 feet. Now, there are people who have asked us for 8.5 feet. We have a model. We'll talk about it a little later, but we have a model called the Traveler. The Traveler is a little shorter, And it's certainly 8.5 feet wide. It doesn't require permits to go down the road. And if you are intending to live the nomadic life, great. We're happy to provide that for you. But that's called the Traveler. The T, 1885 is what that is. So you can do that if you want. By the way, there's a note here. Note that says, is it still certified as an RV? No. Maybe. We have made a company decision. At this point, we are not RVIA certified. We are NOAA certified. We are a house. I would imagine that most RV places would be delighted to have a NOAA certified house in their midst. The NOAA certification is far more sophisticated. At least it used to be. You can talk to Lindsay about it. She's very up on this. But a NOAA certified house is an IRC certified house. And if you put a certified house in an RV setting, that should work just fine. So it will be NOAA certified. Will the RV people take it? Probably. Will city building inspectors take an RV certification as a building certification? That's problematic, which is why we decided to go to on the building certified side. Let's see. Price of materials goes up in the dwelling. All right. Quick tip, and then I'll come back. For cost projection purposes, figure this. Your tiny house is going to cost approximately $350 per square foot. Said and done. All done. Put in gold faucets, you might get up at $400. But in general, if you want to figure $350 a square foot, all done, that's a very good estimation. By the way, second thought, figure about 60 pounds a square foot for weight. So that provides, so the problem then is, if you're trying to go down the road on 2 axles that'll give you 14,000 pounds, that automatically limits you to how big you can go. If you want to go to 3 axles, you can go bigger. You want to go to 4 axles, that's a whole different product. And now you are probably bigger than a tiny house on wheels. The IRC Appendix Q will let you go. And you can certainly do it, but it's a different product. It's a different world. It's a different thing. Okay. So, again, let me come back. From DIY, we went to factory build, which is what we do. The next step beyond that is a custom factory build. No problem. You can have, it's like Alice's Restaurant. You can have anything you want except Alice. In this case, you can have anything you want. Now, at some point, your wish list is going to cross past what is legally allowed or legally simple or legally close to simple and cost. At that point, you back off. It is not unlike this going to an architect and saying, I want to build my own house. I want to build my dream house. And he or she says, fine. And off you go. And after you're done, the thing is 18,000 square feet and it costs $63 million. And you say, well, I don't have $63 million. And my lot is only 8,000 feet. So I guess this is a problem. Same thing here. At some point, your wish list is going to cross beyond the boundary of what is simple enough to do and within the budget. Our suggestion is, don't get crazy. Start with the budget. What do you got? How much money can we spend? Now, by the way, talking about how much money we can spend, I have a list here of hidden costs, and they are very real. So don't ignore them. In fact, what you probably should do is build them into your $350 a square foot. I mean, for example, it's a tiny house on wheels. It has a VIN number. It needs a license and a title. In Arizona's great. I love Arizona. Arizona's hilarious. Arizona basically thinks a tiny house is a trailer with some stuff on the top of it. And that's all they do. So the license is a trailer license, and it costs $850. So fine. And that's a permanent license. It's a license plate with a tag on the back, and off you go. But it's $850. Divided by 300 square feet is another $2 or $3 a square foot, and now you're down to 347, and that's how this game is played. Delivery and movement is not simple. Even an 8.5 foot wide tiny house requires a fairly real sized truck. Inclusive of soft costs. The answer is yes. So here's a question that says $350 in all but in construction costs. And the answer is $350, done. Ready to turn the key in the front door and move in. Done. You're there. You're home at $350. And it can be, that's what we do. So it certainly can be done. Delivery costs are very real. If you go 10 foot wide, then you need permits, which are certainly available. If you go 700 feet long, that's a problem. You're only allowed a certain length of truck and trailer on America's highways. Also, 13 feet 6 is all you can go. And someplace you may not be able to go that high because there may be some wires or trees or some other thing. But 13.6 is all you can go. You will not get a permit if you tell any of the state highway folks that you have more than 13.6. But 13.6 you can go. But delivery cost is very real. We charge $2 a mile to get a ThinHaus from Phoenix, Arizona to wherever it goes. Some places charge 3 or 4 or whatever, and you have to find out what it's going to cost. Also, that last mile is a bit of a trick. If the last mile is not level, flat, truckable, then we've got a problem because we can't get there. We had a customer who wanted to crane it in the last 300 feet. How cool is that? A flying house, it goes in. You can do that. It can be done, but that's not cheap. I suppose you could also helicopter the thing in if you're really serious, but you have to build in the cost. Permits. Permits are real. Permits are important. Permits are the thing that keep you able to sleep at night. If you have a permit and the building inspector comes, first of all, the building inspector will never knock on your door if you have a permit because he's got on his little computer that is, it's permitted and whatever it was, and he leaves you alone. But if it's not permitted, then they knock on your door and they make you nuts. They make you move. They make you change things, whatever. If you get a permit, if you go to the city or the county where you are putting this and you do it, you're done. You live there. I live in a house. My house was permitted. I can go check it on the Scottsdale permit website, and I know the house is permitted. I know that the Scottsdale building inspector isn't going to come to my house and give me a hassle. By the way, hassle equals cost. That's all it is. Anything that is a hassle can be fixed if you have enough money to fix it, whatever it is. But permits, in Scottsdale, again, I'm just talking about, in Scottsdale, if you want to put in a tiny house up north, we talked about that 5-acre thing, the permit's about $1,500. So at some point, you're going to give the city of Scottsdale, you're going to move the tiny house in, you're going to put in a septic field, you're going to bring in electricity, you're going to bring in water, and they'll bring those things into you. By the way, that's also a cost. And somebody was talking about $30,000 or $40,000. It's probably more like 15 or 20, but it's real. They bring those things in. You put your tiny house up on blocks on the corners. You take the wheels off, you slide them underneath, and then you call the inspector, and they come on over, and they say, happy. They write out a green tag, they give it to you, and you give them $1,500, and everybody's happy. If that's how it works where you're doing it, then do it. It will make you sleep better at night. Hooking up, we just talked about hookup. Hookup is real. One of the customizations that we can do, if you want it, is a compost toilet or some other eco toilet situation. We don't do it. The reason is we think that a ThinHaus is a house, and a house has a toilet and it has sewer. It can have a septic field, but it has sewer. You flush the toilet and that's how you live. You don't have to do something with the poo after you're done. If you want to take out the toilet and put in a composting toilet, it's not a problem. Although a regular toilet's like $250, a composting toilet's like $2,000, so now you just spend $750, and you have to go and do what you got to do. If you want it, we'll do it, but we're going to grouse about it, but we'll do it. But hooking up is a thing, and you want to do that. The village concept that we're going to talk about all weekend is unbelievably fabulous, because the idea is you share septic, you share water, you share electricity, and there you go. But you can customize a ThinHaus or anything. You can also customize it backwards, I suppose. It's not really backwards in our mind, but cheaper. Rule of thumb on customization. If you take something out, the price should go down. Simple enough. Anybody who does a customization and keeps the price the same when you take something out, why are you doing that? So if you take out, if you take out our shower and you put in nothing, why would you do that? But if you did, shower costs us to buy about $800. So there's $800 plus about $300 or $400 of installation. So it's about $1,200 that we don't have to spend on your home. If we don't spend it, why should you pay for it? So anything you take out, if you take out a loft, if you bring down the roof, there are many people who come to us with bad knees and are looking for living situations where they don't have to climb stairs. Well, then we're not going to have a loft. Well, that's a less costly ThinHaus than one that does, because it costs us money to build a loft and those things. So taking things out should be cheaper. Moving things around should be the same. Important point. Should be the same. If I take my loft, which is at 7 feet, and move it to 5 feet, that should not cost you anything. It's the same. What do we? If we know before we start, we'll do it. So that's that. So understand how the cost works. Hooking up support, insurance. How can you live in a house and not have insurance? You got to have insurance. You got to figure out what that costs and put it into your budget and figure it out. The foundation. Foundation is a great word for the ground. Could you put a ThinHaus on a packed dirt? You sure could. Don't think I love the idea, but you could do it. Better, you should pack the dirt down, cover it with gravel, pack that down, and have a really nice solid base, and then put it there. By the way, the base, in theory, only needs to be on the four corners instead of the whole thing. But if you do the whole thing, then you won't have grass and other stuff growing, and there you go. Lindsay says there's a Q&A session for 10 a.m. Lindsay says, there's a pop-up for Q&A session for 10 a.m. Is that correct? I don't know what that's all about. Okay. So you should have you should have a place to put the thing. Make the thing bigger than your tiny house. If your tiny house is 10 feet by 24, don't put a 10-foot by 24-foot pad there. It's got to be bigger. It's got to be 14 feet by 26 feet or something like that. You got to have a place to put. And also, unless your aim is exquisite, you might miss getting it right there. So you want a little bigger, a little smaller. Okay. I think there's a mechanism. I've got a video I want to show you of the, here we go. I want to share the screen. I want to share video with attached file. Let's try this. All right, let's share. This is not the attached file. Oh, I see how this works. Okay, so let's go with a share video via link. And if you'll wait 1 second, I'm going to go get the link. The link is from our YouTube channel. If you go to the YouTube channel for ThinHaus, you will see our wonderful, wonderful links that we make. And once we go to my channel, here we go. And Okay, so let's take a look at this. All right, and we will share, and here's the link. Okay, now I'm going to put the link in here, and let's see what happens. See if this works. No, it doesn't work. So nice try. Okay, so we're not going to do that. So if you want to take a look at our videos, here's the video. If you want to come look at the video, go over to the YouTube channel for ThinHaus, and there are a number of links, including video tours of the ThinHaus. Also, we are preparing a series of virtual tours, recognizing that it's hard to get to Arizona these days. And with COVID, I'm not so sure you want to come to Arizona these days, although in some places it's better than wherever you are. But having said that, we're creating the videos. The first one's up. It's on the trailer. The trailer, let's talk for just a moment about customizing the trailer. I can't imagine why anybody would do such a thing, but you could. Our trailer is just about perfect. In fact, it is perfect. There's nothing more we can do. We have redesigned it 43 times, and it's perfect. It's super solid. It's super light for what it is. It has every single thing you're supposed to have, and whenever we call the NOAA folks to certify, the first level of NOAA certification is trailer. So we call them up, and we do the video thing, and we go through it, and the inspection takes about 6 minutes as we show them the VIN number, we show them the emergency disconnects, we show them the lights, we test everything. We test the electric brakes before any of this goes on. We test them when it's made, we test them before you get it. There's not much more to do with the trailer. You can make it bigger, I suppose. You can make it longer. It's 10 feet wide already, so you're not going to make it much wider. You could make it longer. Okay. So anyway, so the trailer video is up. Take a look. It's fun. It's interesting. If you're DIY and you want to know how we do it and how it's done, there it is. Take a look. You can buy just the trailer if you want. If you don't want to do the trailer, we make them. We got them. I'll send you one. So you can do those things. Let me stop for a second. I'm going to stop for just a second because my notes say I want to do a little bit of a sales pitch for ThinHaus. As long as you're here, thanks for coming. We make tiny houses on wheels. We have a bunch of different models. They all look pretty much the same, but they are a bunch of different models. We have the A model, which is the original ThinHaus, which is what you'll see on the website over and over and over because we build that all the time. We also have the B model. The B model is identical to the A model, except that it's a mirror image. And the reason for that is so that we can put them in a V shape and make a bit of a tiny house ranch. Two ThinHouses, two tiny houses, in a ranch configuration gives you 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, a kitchen, living space, all the things privacy for everybody, and the cost is contained. The idea of doing 2 tiny houses together as opposed to one big one is really the reason for the whole thing. So when people come to us and say they want to customize our ThinHaus and they want it bigger, they want it longer, they want it more of it, that's fine. We say, why don't you just buy 2? Or buy an A24, which is 24 feet long, and buy a T 1885, and now you have one that can travel a little easier, one that is more of a homestead, put them together in a bit of a ranch, and now you've got the best of all the worlds. So that's something to think about. We also have a food truck version called the F1885. Because now that Arizona has approved marijuana, we have the G1885, which is a mobile grow house, which you could do. Very cool, by the way. Because now, one of the problems is if you want to grow your own product, how do you do that? Well, we've reconfigured the Traveler to be the grow house. It's actually the food truck became the grow house, but there you go. We also have a C version, which is the his and hers man and girl cave. Basically, instead of bathroom over here, kitchen, living room, we've got office, bathroom, mini kitchen in the middle. Now you have 10-foot office space in the backyard that moves to the next house if you want it. So that's what the C version is. The D version is a version that has the ability to be ADA compliant. In case your knees or your hips don't work very well anymore, that's the D version. Then there is the E version, which is a smaller version of the D, which is made to be sore knee friendly, ADA compliant as you were, and budgetable on Social Security payments. We think that the world is moving in a direction where people can't afford to have a house, and that's where the E model comes in. So if you are looking, if you don't know where you're going to live next, these wonderful people that you're going to see all weekend who are building these villages and figuring out how the tiny house world is going to integrate with the rest of the world, our E version may be a perfect solution that you can afford under $500 a month, and those are available. Anybody who's interested in any of this stuff, we would love to talk to you. Go to ThinHaus.com. You can email me at jay@thinhaus.com, and we'll have a conversation. One of the other components, before I go back to the talk, one of the components is the Lindsay component. I am very concerned that what happened to Lindsay doesn't happen to you or anybody else. And I can tell you it won't happen with ThinHaus because we're not going to take your money until we take your money. So you can talk to us, you can design, you can do anything. You won't pay anything to us until the thing is done, so that you will never be behind the 8 ball. And that's important. First of all, we're not going out of business. We've been in business now 16 years, but that's not the point. The point is, don't pay for something you can't have, because that's how you get into trouble. So when you do a customization, you can and you should expect to pay partial payments along the way. That's reasonable. When you buy a ThinHaus, you don't do that. It's made. I mean, here it is. It's sitting there, and you buy it like a Mercedes, and there it goes. But if you want a customization, we want to be protected. If it turns out that you don't take this ThinHaus that is made to your specifications, we're going to have to either change it back or find someone who wants it, which costs us something. So we're going to ask you, and so is every builder, to make partial payments along the way. That's not unreasonable. You should expect that. But having said that, you should not pay big money along the way. You should pay the partial payments. When we do the electrical, you pay the electrical. When you do the plumbing, you pay the plumbing, the air conditioning, and so forth. So be aware that when you do customization, the payment schedule is going to be a bit different, but you should pay for what you're doing. You also should have the capability of seeing it. That's not unreasonable. Either through video conferencing, FaceTime, or whatever. Show me my house. Show me, I'm giving you $8,000 for electrical and plumbing. Show me. Not unreasonable. We don't get upset when people ask us those things. That's reasonable. People should ask us for those things. Okay. We've now got, let's see, what time is it? It's now 10:15. Let's open it up to questions and answers, and we'll do questions and answers the next 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll see how it goes. Okay? So let's see. I'll start at the beginning of this stream, and I'll take a look at the questions, and then I will, and if you want to share a microphone or something, I think that's one of the things we can do here if you want. All right, so we have an architect who popped in, which is very cool. We love architects. Architects know nothing about this. So if you get an architect, unless they are an absolute expert at small structures, nice, but they're going to design something that you can't build. Even Frank Lloyd Wright couldn't build this because he didn't know. All right, Massachusetts. Massachusetts cold. And there's, by the way, just to make you all upset, it's going to be 85 degrees here in Phoenix today. So come on down. Okay. Good morning, Big Sky Country. It's cold up there. So all right, let's talk about Big Sky Country for a second. Insulation, the walls. It's 15 degrees on this side of the wall, and you want it to be 72 degrees on this side of the wall. Two things have to happen. You have to have a machine that makes heat on this side of the wall, and you have to have a wall that keeps the heat on this side of the wall. Insulation is part of the NOAA IRC code world. You should know what your insulation is. We don't like spray foam only because we don't like chemicals and outgassing. So we use rock wool and closed cell pink and fluff pink and wood fiber to do the things. Yes, there is some thermal transmission because we have steel girders holding the thing up, but we also have 12,000 BTUs for a 300 square foot space to compensate. Yes, we're not the most perfectly ecologically sensitive because we've got 12,000 BTUs, but you don't have to use all 12,000 BTUs just because you got it. By the way, separate point, we have 100 amp electric service coming into a ThinHaus. That can be split into 250s, but 100 amps is what a house has. You can cook a turkey, take a shower, air condition the thing, all at the same time without blowing a fuse. We think that's reasonable. That's how we look. That's how we look. All right, so Oregon, it's raining. We have a roof. We do. We put a roof on it because we don't need it for most of the time here, but sometimes you do. It does rain here. This is why full-time RVs. If you want to move, we had a guy who lived the summers in Montana and in the winters in Florida. You can take a 10-foot ThinHaus from Montana. It's a trip, but you can do it. You just have to make sure you have your permits, and off you go. I wouldn't do it every week. That's more of an RV kind of a thing. But if you want to have a house, a tiny house, a house, that's how you do it. All right, let's see if we got some other questions here. Ready to go. Any experience getting a tiny house in Ozark Mountains in northwest Arkansas? Yeah, as a matter of fact, we have. And it's not a problem. It's just not a problem. You have to remember, we live, if you take a look at a map, 2.5 hours. I can't get, here's the thing. I can't get a ThinHaus from Scottsdale. They're actually built in Gilbert. But I can't get it from Gilbert to Arkansas without going over a 7,000-foot mountain. So we're going to go up and over a 7,000-foot mountain to get our ThinHaus to you. So while the mountains of Arkansas are lovely and they're rolling and they're beautiful, they're not 7,000 feet. By the way, a 7,000-foot mountain requires windows with pressure vents built into them. We do that. Found out the hard way. We build that so the windows are all ready to go up and over a mountain. If you have a window that doesn't have a pressure tube in it and you drive it to Colorado, the windows are going to crack. And you're going to wonder why that happened. And the answer is because you didn't have a pressure tube in the windows because you didn't know you were going to go to Colorado. So that's a thing. Okay, I want to modify my trailer. How do I find a structural engineer that can do this for a tiny house on wheels? The answer is you don't. That's a bad move. To take a trailer, why is it a bad move? Because we can sell you one that's perfect, that works for less than you can modify that thing so that it is close. The other thing is a regular flatbed trailer, as we all know, because we've seen it a million times, has a hump in it. The hump is so when you put the tractor on it, it flattens out. The hump is bad for tiny houses. So to take a flatbed trailer and try and modify it makes no sense. So the answer is don't do it. Just buy a trailer. Now, if you have a trailer and you say, I want to make use of it, sell that one, get as much as you can get for it, and buy the proper equipment. You wouldn't take a hammer to try and drill a hole. A flatbed trailer is not, it looks similar, but it's not the right tool for a tiny house. A tiny house trailer is the right tool. And oh, by the way, if you don't want ours, there are dozens of great companies that make them that you can use theirs. You can shop it and pinch, that's fine. But don't think you're going to save any money or do, because what's going to happen is you're going to build this thing on top of your trailer, and it's not going to be square, it's going to be goofy, and it's going to fall down when you drive them. It's not going to have the pins so the thing doesn't hold. It's a mess. Don't do it. Okay. Is a tiny house, it is a tiny house, what is it? How much is basic trailer? How much the basic trailers vary with respect to the amount? The answer is a trailer basically costs what it costs based on length and width. How much steel is in the thing. Our trailers, by the way, all have drop axles, except sometimes on the custom side, we don't. If we don't have a loft, we don't have to spend the money for the drop axles. There's a trade-off on drop axles. If you drop the axles 4 inches, your trailer is 4 inches close to the ground, and if you hit a bump, you're going to grind against the ground. So you have to drive slowly. And if you are in a place that has speed tables and speed bumps, you're going to grind. So be very, very aware of that. Drop axles get you close to the ground, so it makes more use of your 13 feet 6 at the top. If you don't have the problem with 13 6 at the top, then you don't need to worry about the extra 4 inches. I want to modify trailer. How do I find a structure? No, we talked about that. Okay. Any experience with getting a tiny house? We talked about that. The $350 that I'm talking about, that's all said and done. So you should be able to do that. By the way, kitchen. What if we don't put the kitchen in? What if we leave the kitchen out? That brings the price down about $8,500. And maybe what happens is that brings it more into your price line, and you can add the kitchen later. Adding a kitchen to a tiny house is not a problem. It's like adding a kitchen to any house. You just put it in, the connections are already there. So that might be something. All right. Tyson and Brian are now live. Oh, okay. Driving into tiny house design. Join them. Okay, so you can do that. We're going to go for another 8 minutes, and then we're going to be done. Financing. If you go to our website, you'll see 6 or 8 companies that finance. Financing is not hard if you have credit. If your credit score stinks, it's going to be a trick. And I'm not going to be able to help you, and I don't know what to tell you other than to get your score up. If your credit score is good, it's simple and fairly cheap these days. If your credit score is okay, it's pretty simple and pretty cheap. If it's bad, it's going to be hard and probably not so cheap. So there you go. Many finance operations, banks, will talk about financing a tiny house as an RV. Okay, that's what they want to do. But I would prefer to do it, if I were you, as a personal loan. It's the same thing. Actually, it might cost a little less. And it's easier. But that's between you and your bank. But call your bank. Or, here's something that's very Arizona-centric, but also probably works in Utah and California. If you aren't a member of a credit union, take a look at that. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's a bank that you actually are part owner in, and they are much friendlier and will really work with you on such a thing as financing your home. So take a look around where you live and see if you can find a credit union. Give them their $25 a year to be a member. Put your savings in there, put your checking in there, all that sort of stuff, credit cards, all that stuff. They'll do all those things. And then talk to them about financing your tiny home. You may find, I'm pretty sure you're going to find, that is a wonderful solution and solves your finance problem. All right. What is your hitch? All right. Hitch is an interesting question. We use a standard 2 5/16 ball on a 5-foot kingpin hitch, not 4-foot, 5-foot. The reason for 5-foot is because up above, we've got 5 feet of master bedroom and we have the whole thing balanced. But our tiny house is under 14,000 feet. It's got two 7,000 pound axles. So it's 14,000 pounds and will tow with an F-250, or in our case, we use a Ram 2500 truck. So you can do that. And it works beautifully, and it's great. So that's the case. If you go to a gooseneck, we hear this all the time. I want to go to a gooseneck. I want to go to 35 feet in a gooseneck. You can do that. But a gooseneck trailer, besides requiring a 3,500 truck or a semi to haul, gooseneck trailer is a lot more steel and a lot more expensive. So now you're spending, 5-minute notice. So now you're spending money on things that don't show up in your everyday living world. Be careful. Take your budget, whatever it is, and try and put as much of it into the stuff that you see and use every single day. The stuff that you don't see every day, the trailer, try and avoid that if you can. If your dream is a 35-foot gooseneck tiny house, we'll build it for you and we'll bring it to you. But know that you have spent your money that way. And we'll tell you, but that's what's going on. Just curious, what kind of mileage do you expect to travel in a year? 0. 0. The answer is we don't really think. We're not building RVs. We're building homes that can move, not homes that will move a lot. By the way, we're also setting up an emergency moving service so that you can call us up in 12 hours notice and we'll come running with our fancy trucks and our fancy skills and haul you out from where the river's going to overflow. That might be a useful tool for you. Okay, check out the tiny house tours. Those are wonderful. Okay, what else we got here? All right, I don't see anything. Anybody else have anything you want to talk about? Emergency hauling, that's great. It's pretty. Ari had a thing where he wanted to put pontoons on the tiny house, and the idea was, and a motor, and it would just go up, and you could then. But the idea of motoring your ThinHaus down the Mississippi in flood stage is probably not a great idea, but it was a funny idea. And then from there, of course, we got wings and rockets and all sorts of things, which of course we're not going to do. Do you build dried-in shells only? Absolutely. You can absolutely have that. In fact, you can absolutely have anything we're doing if you stop us along the way. In other words, if you want us to have the trailer, you got it. If you want the trailer and the framing, you got it. If you want the trailer, the framing, here's our process. We build the trailer. We put framing on. We build the trailer, we put the flooring in. We build the framing on top. We then put the electrical, the plumbing, and the air conditioning in all at one time so we can see what we're doing. Then we sheathe it out, dry it in, put the roof on. Roof got put in earlier, but put the roof on. And then at that point, we then put the outside cladding on. We put the inside poplar in. We put in our bathrooms and our kitchens and our final finishing, and there you go. So the answer is you can stop us at any point and take it. And people do that, by the way. People buy it from us without the interior. They would rather have, we put in poplar because it's light, it's airy, it's cost effective, and it's pretty. So we do that. But if you wanted a shake interior or some sort of a fancy, heavy interior, then stop us before we put our poplar in. We'll bring it to you. You can put in whatever you want. But be aware, once you do that, it becomes difficult to move. If you go over 14,000 pounds, in theory, you can't move it. And by the way, theory becomes practice when you get to the state line everywhere. If you get to the state line in California and you go on the scales and you are overweight, they're not going to be happy. They're going to say they're not going to say, go ahead. They're going to say, go over here. And now they're going to have a discussion with you. A discussion with the state police means money. So, okay, I'm going to wrap it up. If anybody wants to continue any of these conversations, we would be delighted to. Email me at jay@thinhaus.com. I'm going out to the Build Center. I'll be back this afternoon. We'll talk about anything you want to talk about. It's free. Conversation is free. Starts to get expensive when you want to buy something from us, which we'd love to have you do. And we will help you. If you're doing it yourself, we'll help you. We'll give you plans. We'll tell you where the tips and tricks are. We're in this to make everybody better. Our feeling is we do it great. Let us do it. But if you want to, that's not a problem. Okay, let's see. Awesome. We'd love to have you join us, adding you to the Tiny Home Pioneers and cool. So now I'm a Tiny Home Pioneer and influencer. Have a great day. Have fun at the festival, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you again.